On today's show, we talk about Alex Ovechkin and what to expect from him this season, and how long will it take for him to catch Wayne Gretzky. We'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holney. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Alex Ovechkin and what to expect from him this next season. You could pretty much set your watch to his production year after year after year. You knew he was going to be a key contributor. He was going to score a lot of goals, but he mixed everything up last season when he got off to his slowest start in his career. He then turned on the Jets after the All-Star break. So what can we expect from him in the start of the 24-25 season? We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about his current contract, as Ovechkin is only under contract through the 25-26 season. Can he catch Gretzky under his current contract? A little bit later, we'll talk about his equipment. Much has been said about that slow start that I mentioned off the top there. Some people thought it was because he was out of shape. Some people thought it was nutrition. But as it turns out, equipment played a rather large role in his slow start. We'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about TJ Oshie and what to expect from him this season. And once again, in this episode, I am joined by Hockey Troll of the Caps Chirp podcast. And here is my conversation with him. In this episode, we are joined by Hockey Troll of the Caps Chirp podcast. So a player that has some questions surrounding him is Alex Ovechkin, as it has been reported that he suffered a minor knee injury and wasn't able to participate in some sort of celebrity game taking place over in Russia. Do you think he needs to pump the brakes a little bit? He is getting ever more closer to the age of 40. And it was the topic of yesterday's show for me. And I said that, I think that, when you're getting paid a boatload of money to play professional hockey for a team, maybe you shouldn't partake in some things that are as risky because the team is paying you a lot of money to perform. And I know that in the back of your mind, like, I'm getting paid even if I don't perform. I think it's the right thing to do to be kind of more trustworthy than that. I think back to Ilya Samsonov and getting in that ATV accident. And I understand it's an accident, but that's what I'm talking about. What are your thoughts on Alex Ovechkin's off season? Having that knee injury, does that cause any concern with you?
Not really. Look, I mean, I'm yearning for the days when we were just a bunch of dudes commenting on Alex Ovechkin's summer bod. Remember that? That was the weirdest phenomenon, is that, like, Alex Ovechkin looks fat, like, as he's being photographed on the beach. Like, that was weird, guys. I'm glad it's over, but honestly, like, it was quite unique of a bit of thing that was the media seemed to be obsessed with. But no, I think, no, look, Ovi, what are you gonna tell that guy? Like, oh, you can't drink beer and like while out a little bit. You can't, catch a buzz and like run around on the beach. Like, I mean, you're gonna tell that guy that? Good luck. I always say that if this was 1,000 years ago, we'd be throwing in money just to not murder everyone. You know what I mean? Like medieval times. So, um, I mean, so you look at a superstar. Yeah, obviously, it would be incredibly unfortunate if he had some off-season accident that messed him up. Has he had that before? Not that I can think of. I don't think he's ever really, he's Ovi, as goofy as the dude is. I feel like he's actually a consummate professional. You can say all sorts of things, but like this is a guy who's had headbutts with coaches, but he's never been to the point where he's like full diva status. Like, I'm not showing up to practice. I'm not doing these things. You know what I mean? Um, so I feel like he's a lot more professional than people give him credit for. And I could totally get it because, he seems like a man child who's just like having a blast all the time, even though he's got, he's a family and everything now. At least that's the Ovi that I'd always like to remember. Kind of a Maradona, if you will.
Yeah, so I mean, the guy's got to have some fun, and to your point, you're not going to be able to tell him no anyway. But he definitely marches to the beat of his own drummer. He's a guy that eats a lot of pasta. He is a guy that has Coca-Cola in his water bottle. He kind of just does his own thing. And you look at the young guys in the league. That's one thing that was noticeable at the draft for me is that these guys, well, they don't look like Yager anymore when they're younger. These guys are pretty small because they're eating like boiled chicken and broccoli all the time. That Alex Ovechkin's like, hey, I made it this far. I'm not going to change anything about it. But being that you were talking about the photo, that was an interesting thing is I think we all saw the picture of him on the beach with, a bit of a pot belly, I guess I'm going to say. But I think it was a Photoshop thing because his wife was quick, thereafter to put out a picture of him looking better in shape. So I think that that's just maybe the Russian media or these meme generators trying to generate some negative press. But as we take a look at more substantial things that really matter about Alex Ovechkin is his goals. Currently at 853 goals all time, needs to catch 894, so 41 to catch, 42 to pass. Got off to his slowest start ever last season. Only 9 goals by the All-Star break, finished with 31. What kind of season do you think Alex Ovechkin is going to have next year? Do you think he's going to just hit the ground running? Or do you think that there's still going to be a little bit of stumble in his step just because he is getting a little bit older?
Oof. I mean, I think that if you zoom out by the end of next season, he's going to be very close to the record, if not already have it in hand. Which, I kind of almost want it to span over 2 seasons because, like, as he scores, like, the last bit to break the record, he's going to be in mid-season form and he's going to go out and like still be scoring goals just to pad the stats, kind of get him warmed up to continue to shatter the record and add a little distance, rather than shattering it this year and then having like petering out the next year. It's like, kind of what do we got to play for? Obviously there's a ton, but you know what I mean? I think OV is good for 30. I think he's at least good for 30. I would love to see 40. I would love to just see him come back out. But we have to rein in our expectations. He's clearly been vocal about not being comfortable being put on several different lines and Carberry throwing him in the blender and things like that. But he's got to know that, look, this is a brand new coach. There's a ton of new faces in here. And Carberry is of the new age where, nothing's off the table. Creativity is abound. It's not, kind of one of those things where Carberry is going to try to force the team into his idea of hockey. He's more going to look at the assets that he has and how to best utilize them, right? Which I think is smart. I think that's a very sound strategy for sure. I think there's going to be frustration for sure on Ovi's end, but I don't think it'll be anything where it boils over into some sort of dramatic meltdown. He may start off slow. I would expect it. But, I mean, after all, I can't believe, the first half of the season was so dry for Ovechkin. The worst, by far the worst stretches that he's ever had in his career, which is absolutely insane that he's having that now in like year 18. It's like he's gone 10 10 games without a goal, the Earth is going to crash into the moon. That's nuts. I mean, that's just insane consistency and how just the bundles of goals that he scored. Um, it truly is. I mean, I think that when Ovi's done, you're going to look at him and Gretzky and things like that, and like you're going to be able to, if you really stack them up, and you look at like actual greatness over the more amount of years, it's going to be Ovechkin hands down. But yeah, I think he's good for 30. I would love to see him get at least 30, and I'd like to have him have a steady year. But if there's anyone that at this age is going to come out and have a 50 goal season, I think you'd be stupid to not bet on Alexander Ovechkin.
All right, so after the break, we will talk about Alex Ovechkin's contract. He is only under contract with the Capitals through the 25-26 season. Is it possible for him to catch Wayne Gretzky under his current contract? And then we'll talk about his equipment, as it turns out that played a rather large role in his slow start. We'll discuss straight ahead. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And we take a look at his contract. It's kind of crazy that it's always seemed like, well, it's not that, it's a long ways away. It's 25-26 season is the last season he is under contract. And he has openly said, and I know he's a guy that could change his mind, that he doesn't plan on signing any sort of extension. I would imagine if he was 10 goals short of catching Gretzky, he might consider it. Is it kind of surreal for you as a Capitals fan that we're coming up on the 25-26 season not too long from now? For one, do you think he's going to be able to catch him under the current contract? And it's kind of crazy and makes you feel a little bit old that this guy that didn't seem like that long ago was just entering the league is, looking at the twilight of his career already.
It's a sad reality. It's an incredibly disturbing and sad reality. Dan, I'm going to be honest, I haven't really thought about it because I'm not sure what it'll do to my mental health. When it comes down to it, honestly, I think that if he's close, he'd sign another. I don't think he has any intention on needing to sign another. I think that he's going to walk away at the end of this contract with a healthy double-digit goal pad on the record and going to be able to say, that's it, and go to Russia, play for 5 years, screwing around, and then retire. And he's got things that he wants to do back in Russia, which, like his school of hockey and the community stuff that he likes to do. Like, maybe the next phase of a superstar, he will be instantly retired in the Hall of Fame. Maybe that's the case, kind of go out before you're too clapped out. And, honestly, I think that Ovechkin would be owed another 5-year deal at, at least a few million a year. I really do think that would be a viable thing if he wanted it. But Ovechkin's never been the guy that's like, oh, I might not return to Russia. Since he was a rookie, whenever the subject came up, he's very proud of his country and he wants to return to his home. And I can't really fault a guy that wants to do that. He's never wavered from that. That was the plan. That was his career. That's what he had envisioned. So, I wish him the best once it goes, but man, I'm going to be incredibly, incredibly sad.
So some of the things that have been said about him are era adjusted goals, meaning that if you take a look at the style of play years ago versus how they play today, that era adjusted goals already has beaten Gretzky,
Yeah.
and you can factor in certain styles about how the netminders played years ago, where it wasn't the butterfly style; they kind of just flailed their legs back and forth. Old people want to argue with me about that. I'm like, dudes, just look at it. It wasn't the best net minding ever. And also, you are a guy that still plays hockey. Is about the evolution of sticks. We're talking the old sticks were
Yeah.
wood, the new ones are fiberglass, and constantly evolving. How much do you think equipment factors in with the old wood sticks versus the new sticks, all that kind of thing? How important is equipment at the end of the day?
Super important. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny that you bring up equipment because those goaltenders of yesteryear, yeah, their style was much different and they were much less effective, right? They left a lot of holes in the net. But that equipment weighed 4 times as much as it does today. Soaking wet, I bet it was damn near 100 pounds of crap that you're wearing. Now the equipment's ergonomic, wicking, lightweight. It feels like when you get into that stuff that you could stop a bullet. And I mean, it really gives you this false sense of protection. I mean, if it can stop a 90-mile-an-hour puck coming at you, it's pretty strong. And being so light and free moving in it is completely, it's wild. The equipment absolutely matters. The stick, everybody's got a shot now, and it's crazy. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of beer leaguers who have $300 sticks and cannot rip a one-timer, even make contact with a one-timer, much less put it top corner at 110 miles an hour at NHL speeds, right? So while the equipment does make it better, Ovi's shot, I'm sure he practiced it, but that's something that's a little bit natural, right? That's superhuman in that sense. And that's really the same with a lot of NHLers. I think that people would be, even the difference between like a D1, XD1 guy who goes and plays against a, ECHL or AHL, the gap in talent and just like basic skills like shooting a puck are completely different, really. The D1 guys leaps and bounds below generally than than a guy who played in even the AHL. So, yes, the equipment has made things a lot easier, but at the same time, I think that the equipment's kind of evolved with the players.
All right, so after the break, we'll talk about the latest with TJ Oshie. Will he return to the Capitals, or will he spend the last year of his contract on LTIR? We'll discuss straight ahead. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And listen, I understand that this is kind of the dog days of professional sports. Hockey is not being played. Football training camps are just open. But your Washington Nationals are still playing baseball. So open up that FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, the game is that much more exciting. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So next, I talked to Hockey Troll about TJ Oshie. Quite a guy. He's been a key contributor to this team for so many years. But some of the things out there that have been said is that he's going to spend the last year of his contract on LTIR. And TJ Oshie himself had said that he does not want to come back unless a doctor, a specialist can make some sort of promise that he's not going to face the kind of issues and injuries that he's faced here the last few years, is there a physician that will make that kind of promise? We'll discuss next. So as we take a look at this last season here, it was kind of a sad season. It was sketched out a certain way, and Spencer Carberry talked about the struggles with this team. To start the season last season, it was going to be Nick Backstrom. We know he stepped away from hockey indefinitely. TJ Oshie faced injuries, and Evgeny Kuznetsov out of town as well. So 3 really big pieces. 2 of them we know for sure pretty much. And TJ Oshie is still somewhat up in the air. Let's talk about TJ Oshie here briefly. Talk about the impact that he has on this team. He is quite a playmaker, and when he is playing in top form, there's not a lot of other guys that do it much better than him, and a unique guy in the regard that I have never found anyone to say something negative about him. It's all positive. He's a positive guy. But as we take a look at him, he's looking for some assuredness going into next season. That's what he said from doctors, that he is not going to have to put himself through what he went through last season, sleeping on the floor, urinating in a bottle, having to fly his doctors in from Minnesota to kind of put him back together again and push him out on the ice. I think it's a bit selfish as fans to say, you go out there and play one more year. I'm more concerned about TJ Oshie, the man. He's still got a wife. He's still got kids. He's still a fairly young man. Talk to me about the impact of TJ Oshie, and what are your thoughts on him going into next season? Do you think he is in fact going to play, and what should he prioritize?
No, I agree. He's so TJ Oshie, a red-blooded American, and obviously his Olympic fame in Sochi was unmatched. I loved the trade. I've loved his career, even as a Blue. I really liked him as a player. And when we got him, I was like, wow, that's an awesome trade. Not only just seems like a cool guy, but also love the style of play. He was a high skilled player and continues to be a high skilled player with tremendous hands and skating ability, but would not shy away from body contact. And he's not a huge dude either. And I've seen TJ Oshie lay people out in some pretty routine plays that seemed routine, at least for him. And he hits like a guy who's 6 inches taller. And I know he takes pride. He clearly takes pride in this aspect of his game, or else he wouldn't be pushing his body so far. And that adds to it, right? It's not like he's doing this on accident. He has to will himself into it. And I think that anybody who's played contact hockey understands that when you fully commit to a body check going at high speed, like, you could come out of this thing just worse than the other guy, right? So it takes a lot of courage to do that, I think. And I love his style of play. I think that, he's always been a guy who gets banged every year, man. Every year TJ Oshie has been hurt. In the off season, you hear about the surgeries he has to take and like broken bones and things like that. Hockey players are incredibly tough, but it seems like TJ Oshie dips the matches in gasoline before lighting them, when he goes out to play. So I think that, while I would love TJ Oshie to be out there, he said himself that he really just doesn't want to be a liability. He wants to be a player who's going to make an impact. He said that, and I get it, the worst part, well, one of the things that he didn't like about coming back kind of banged up was that he wasn't making a difference out there and helping his team win and I think his words exactly were taking a spot away from someone who could. And when you're a veteran, you get a longer leash and things like that. And as of course, TJ Oshie deserves all the length of leash in the world. I think that shows like what a team guy he is, that he's not thinking like, well, I don't get to go out. It's no, I'm not making the team better. Could be, given a guy who's trying to build his career, who can do better than I can right now, taking a spot away from him. I just think that's so class. And, I love TJ Oshie. I think he should do what's best for himself. I know it's going to be tough to step away, but it seems like he's kind of already leaning that way. Maybe as kind of an act of farewell, because he's still under contract, maybe he gets in a couple and they have to make a few cap moves to move guys around. He gets a few games in and kind of sees what's what. It is still up in the air. We don't have any certainty, but it really looked like last season he was feeling it and finally ready to, like you said, make the make the decision for longevity and quality of life at this point.
It's got to be a tough decision for him, that is for sure, but we wish him nothing but the best. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals Hockey Troll. Why don't you tell everyone where we can find your work?
Absolutely. So we're on break right now, but you can find the podcast at Caps Chirp on all socials, and you can find me at Hockey Trollin with an IN on all socials as well. Thanks a lot, man, for having me on. It's always good talking.
All right, and I want to thank Hockey Troll for joining me all this week while I've been on vacation. I will be back in the studio next week, so make sure and tune in for some new shows. But once again, thanks for Hockey Troll for joining me. Check out his podcast, the Caps Chirp Podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On NHL, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.